Hey, and welcome to the Nobody's Famous podcast.
Distant heat. Let me, capital M, capital E, party in peace.
You get to share your story with the world.
Stick around and join us on our journey to explore the wonderful stories of people you've never heard of. All right. Welcome to the Nobody's Famous podcast. We are back, and it's another amazing episode of the quarantine sessions. We started this series so we can explore people's experiences in different parts of the world and help provide solutions for people like in these difficult times. In a previous episode, we talked about isolationships, which is basically meaning you're in a relationship, but during isolation. We talked about long distance relationships, how you can deal with that. And we also talked about Trump's statement about injecting disinfectant into your body. We discussed what people are doing during this time. Today, we have a great episode and a great guest with the one and the only Jeannette Peyre.
Oh my God. Hey.
Hi.
Hi.
Great start.
Yay.
Yay. So, Jeannette, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, first of all.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And please intro yourself for the
Okay.
guests and the listeners.
Okay, so my name is Jeannette. I'm 32 years old. I live in Paris, as you can see. And well, listen, not much. I work for a perfume company, and I've been living in Paris for the past 12 years. And yeah.
So my first question is quickly, how is the situation in Paris or France that in general, let's say, different from other countries right now?
I don't think it's any different from other European countries. I think we're pretty much all, confined at home. Can only go out only 1 kilometers around us.
Yeah.
And only to buy groceries and go to the pharmacy. So, yeah, it's a tough time.
Okay.
Weird time.
And you said you work in a perfume company, a fragrance company, and you mentioned to me separately that it was founded in 1904.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I want to ask a question. So that means that company has been through a pandemic already, which is the Spanish
Exactly.
flu. Has
Yeah.
been. So, do you think do you have anyone in the company who has given guidance on what happened back then? People who may have been, let's say, have a guidebook or some protocols for the current situation, something like that.
No, actually nobody that is still alive can talk about this, but we have found some archives from the founders who have been through wars, both of them.
Yes.
Where they sent each other letters, and it's beautiful because actually, this perfume company is one of the first ones ever created in France with Caron, that you might know, and Coty. So they're both still also alive today. And no, it's a great company. It's very old and it's gone through a lot of pandemic and crisis. Yeah, and it's still there.
Okay, so you it would be right to say that that your company. What's the name, by the way? You didn't mention the name.
It's Caron.
Okay.
Caron, Caron.
Okay.
Actually, Arabs love this brand.
Oh, yeah?
Because we have a lot of oud and
Amazing.
rose and so yeah, we're pretty actually famous there. I mean, famous is a big word because it's a small company, but
the show. Yeah. So, I mean, it would be right to say that in a way that your company is well equipped to kind of like handle the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you think, like being in that kind of industry, do you think other brands similar to yours are also struggling, or how are they connecting with their consumers, or for example?
They're also struggling. But I think now when you look at social media, they're not communicating around the product so much. They're not trying to be, have this business oriented kind of way to communicate to people. Like what they're trying to do is go back to their roots, to the history, try to talk about like our company, like the last post we did were about the founders in 1904, and the great perfumes we've launched that have impacted our society. And it's the same for like our competition. Like Dior has gone back to 1947, when Christian Dior like started his first first perfume. And we all go back to this, in this time of uncertainty, we go back to the roots. That's mainly the message.
Okay, that's interesting. Just reinforcing reinforcing the values, and in a time of reflection to allow to reinforce the values. Yeah, that's cool. So I want to ask a bit about yourself, actually, Jeannette. You are a true Parisian, living in Paris and the land of croissants and cobbled cobbled streets, lovely architecture, the city of love, etc., etc. People are bustling through the streets, and it's always busy, things to talk about, things to do. Now that the situation has drastically changed, how are you coping with the current environment around you?
It's tough because like you said, Paris is a beautiful city like many others, but it's so hard to not come across this beautiful lady, and not see it, and just be able to walk around your block. Like that's tough, but I mean, we have to do this to then be able to go out and have a life again. And it's tough, but I think what's important is to keep connecting to the people you're surrounded by, your loved ones. Like this is what doesn't make you go crazy.
Yeah. And well, in a way, you're not completely unlucky. So I mentioned that we spoke about in another episode about isolationship, and people are, for example, away from their partners or loved ones. But for example, for you, it's not the case. You're with your boyfriend at home, which is probably the best situation, since you're not apart. But do you feel, for example, you might have different obstacles? Like, do you feel like you still want to socialize? How do you cope with each other at home? Do you separate tasks, etc.?
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy because you're with the person 24/7. And when you think about it, on a daily basis, you're usually at work for 8 hours, and then you see the person only in the mornings or at night. And in this case, you see the person every day, all the time, at any time. So I mean, it's been great. Actually, it's actually making me stronger, but also because we try to sometimes keep, have separate times. And thank God we live in an apartment. We're very thankful. We have 2 rooms, which is great. So I can stay and work in one room and he can be in the other one. So we only see each other, during the day a little bit, but we're not always on each other's back. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, you can build a routine for yourself, and keep it the same as if it was work, and then continue normally. Yeah. Well, that's good advice, I guess. Routine and doing the separation as it would be normally in a normal situation.
Right? Yeah.
And being or living in the land of romance, what do you think? Do you think that do you think it's harder now to find, for example, for people who are single, do you think it's harder for them to find someone new? Or in a way, I mean, we have technology still, thank God we still have that, but do you think it's harder or easier?
I think it's harder because, we're human beings. We're social creatures. Like we need to be in contact with each other to survive. Definitely it's harder. but it's also like I have some friends who are using, you know, those apps, those dating apps, and they've been having some luck, you know. They're like
Yeah.
actually getting to know people, you know, like for real. Like they talk every day on the phone, like, and they haven't seen each other, or maybe, you know, through pictures or some calls, but they haven't had that contact. And I think that's a new way of, you know, falling in love, and I think that's actually great.
Yeah, I think to that point, because people would argue and say, well, all these apps have been here for a while, and actually people have already been on them for a while. So for them, the situation didn't really change. The only difference is that they can't actually have that one meeting, but maybe some people, especially across borders, have maybe in contact with each other for years before they actually meet. So in a way, the situation for them is not really, really different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is the part of the show where we have some questions from our followers, and they would like to ask you a couple of things. And we have some really interesting ones. So if you don't mind, we'd like to start with the first one.
Okay.
So we have this question from @Brit Wilkslingam, and she asks, "What is the most surprising thing you learned about yourself during quarantine?"
Surprising. I mean, I'm not gonna be very it's gonna be a very common answer, but it like I can cook. Like now I can cook. Like I master some dishes that you would never know. Like this is surprising to me.
Like what type? Like what like a Parisian, like a traditional Parisian dish, or?
I actually don't eat a lot of French food.
Mm,
I try to go, you know, like I tried harder. It's necessarily more difficult. It's just that I actually take the time to bake, to cook, and that's surprising to me. Like I don't take that much time in the kitchen. Like I don't waste
yeah,
that much time,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's a pleasure. I love it. So
Okay, that's great. I mean, a lot of people nowadays are learning that skill and figuring out that, you know, they want to pass the time. We mentioned it even in the last episode that everyone is just staying at the fridge, but maybe another way of you know, if you're listening, maybe another way to kind of curb, I mean, it's a bit difficult, but to curb your cravings is to actually cook the food, you know, and then you see the food all the time, then you probably get bored,
it's
you won't eat.
true.
So
It's true. I think you actually, yeah, it is true. Like you feed yourself looking at the food.
exactly.
No, I mean, eventually you eat it, but yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
What about you though? What is
Surprising thing, well, I mean, uh the surprising thing for me was, I don't know if it's like I learned how to video edit, and I surprised myself once I actually put something together. And even though it was super basic, it's just the magic of video. And when you put things together and the music is in the right tune and it comes out
yeah,
nice, you go like,
proud?
damn, I can do this. You know, I can do this. And that's the first step into, you know,
Yeah.
a world of learning. So I surprised myself like a few weeks ago, and I was so happy, and
Good.
I felt really good. And yeah, it was a good thing. So I would, you know, for the listeners, I would say, guys, like anything that you can learn new,
Yeah.
you will surprise yourself, and you will realize how much, you know, you will um, uh, learn, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, there is another question. It's a bit long, but and it's a bit
Tricky.
interesting. It's a bit interesting. From El Qaisi, Layla Al Qaisi, she says, in this time of social media, people are, I mean, we kind of touched on it a bit, but it's nice, are continuously pressured into feeling like they should achieve more and do more while in quarantine. While quarantine is stressful enough as is, how should people prioritize their free time to live as much of a balanced lifestyle as possible? And I'll be the first to say I'm a victim of my
Me too.
work-life balance is just off the charts, because I find myself sometimes working on the weekend because my workstation is in front of me. So what do you think about that?
It's a very good question, first of all, because we all face, like you said, we all face it. We don't have any boundaries anymore because our workplace is now our home. I mean, it's everything. And it's very hard to put some limits. But it is really, really important to do so. Like, we have to keep sane. We have to stay healthy. We have to do whatever it feels best for you, I would say. Don't feel any pressure whatsoever. And if you do, you do feel this pressure, try to like take a deep breath and tell yourself that this is a tough time for everybody. You cannot do everything.
Yeah.
You're not a robot. There's a time limit. There's exhaustion. Like, you can't do everything. You're a human being. So try to do your best. Take care of yourself. And if it's overwhelming, just take a step back. I mean, it's a very tough time, and people have to understand that we have to also come up with some limits and to keep sane. I mean, we're right now, I'm in a tiny apartment, and we're two. Like, at some point, if I don't feel that I can balance it out somewhere, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Maybe jump off Eiffel Tower right here. I don't know, but no, it's important to keep sane. Like, yeah.
No, I agree. I think to add on to what you said is probably the best way is to keep a schedule, keep a routine, and try to make it different daily. Like, when I say routine, may sound like the same thing, but keep track of the days. People are not keeping track of the days, and try to make a routine for yourself which can change daily. Which obviously you have your work, and then you have your free time, and always to keep it different. So then this leads us to the third question quite nicely then, which was asked by @unmuted show. You should check that out, guys. It's a new podcast from actually one of our biggest fans, Adnan from Svengali Music. He's been kind enough to drop us a question, and I think you kind of touched on it. And it says, from the two extremes during the lockdown, the grind, work, and learn everything you can, versus the stay calm, learn, stillness, and reflect. Where do you fall on the spectrum?
What is it again? Sorry.
It's the grind, work, and learn everything you can.
Okay. Yeah. I'm on that side, I think. What about you?
Well, for me, my mind is there. But my body is telling me to stay calm and to learn. My body's like, it's maybe it's also still in my mind. Actually, my mind is like half. Part of me is saying, like, you need to do this, and then you're always on social media, right? So you see something and you see somebody did that, then you feel like, oh, I have to do this now. So all these questions are related, and yeah, for me it's a battle in my mind, and I think that the best answer is it depends on each person, and I think you should take your own pace at things. If you don't want to do anything, don't do anything. If you want to learn something, maybe if you learn a course a week, that's more than fine. I don't think, again, going back to the second question, I don't think anyone should feel any pressure, and I think it's good to keep these two spectrums in mind. So again, the grind, work, and learn everything you can, versus the calm, still learning, but stillness and reflect. So I think keeping those two extremes in mind and just realizing that. Yeah. Okay. Are you ready for a bonus question? There's a bonus question from actually at JK Music, who was actually the first guest ever. Well, technically the second, but he became the first episode because there's a pilot that nobody knows about. But anyway, technically the first guest on the Nobody's Famous podcast. And he asks you, what would you do to entertain your viewers if you were given the task to keep them entertained during quarantine?
That's a tough one. I don't know if people want to see me do anything. I don't know. I mean, I guess cook. I mean, I feel like that's all I do now.
Well, there you go.
Maybe make pasta. Show you guys how to make pasta.
Well, there you go. maybe that's the time to pause, reflect, and then plan for for doing teaching people how to do recipes and stuff. This is the time,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. True.
What a present time this is. Well, the last question is, do you have any questions for me?
Yes, I do. No, I wanted to know how you feel.
Well, so the situation here, it kind of really, I want to say, escalated quickly in terms of controlling the situation. So we were at one day, things were normal, and then the next day it was complete. I mean, there was gradual kind of stopping of things, but then at one point it was completely stopped. And for us, I mean, we are the city that I live in, Abu Dhabi, we're kind of lucky that in that we have a curfew versus other cities where it's a complete lockdown. So, for example, here you have the time to go out up to a certain period of time, and then you have to come back home. Whereas, for example, in El Salvador, or even like you said in Paris, you can't go out. For example, it has to be once or twice or three times a week, and that's it. So I would say that we are lucky, and the situation um, is relatively, better than other epicenters. Let's put it that way. You know.
How you feel every day, like being inside and
Yeah,
I guess like everybody else, but
I'll be
how do you?
honest. Yeah, I'll be honest. But for me, it's
Mhm.
been like uh, demotivating. Let's put it that way. There are days which are great, and some days which are. It's like no, no. So
No,
just
I'm
no, not
stupid.
another one. I mean, for me, like it's very up and down. I try, like I said, I try to learn new things to kind of um, help with and cope with
That's
these
good.
things to feel good inside. That I've done something different. But to be very honest, it has been demotivating. That's the major factor for me. I mean, personally, I wanted to go out more this year, so good on me. Let's put it that way.
Yay.
Great start. Great start.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, Jeannette, I want to say thank you so much.
Thank you.
It has been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. I want to end it here. Um,
That's
any final words?
No, thank you for having me, and it was a great talk, really, honestly.
Thank you, Jeannette. Thank you for the time. I'll sign us off. So this has been the Nobody's Famous podcast with the one and the only Jeannette Peyre. Thank you for being with us. You can find us on Anghami, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, TuneIn. What else am I missing? Anywhere, any podcast platform. If we're not on it, you just tell me, and we'll be on it soon. And you can watch us on YouTube. I used to say, don't watch us while driving, but you're not driving, you're at home. So watch us as much as you want. And thank you for tuning in to the Nobody's Famous podcast.